Well, hello and welcome to another Charlie Crimebuster Crime Talk. Today, James and I are going to be discussing episode number 5, Karen Reed, cop girlfriend, or cop killer. And we're going to be talking about what Karen Reed can expect coming up next after the mistrial. This and a whole lot more on today's program.
The views and opinions expressed in this presentation are solely those of the individuals interviewed or participating and do not represent those of Charlie Crimebuster nor Peacemaker Network. All individuals described or mentioned in the presentation should be considered innocent until found guilty in a court of law. This presentation contains subject matter such as violence and graphic descriptions, which may not be suitable for all audiences. Listener and viewer discretion is advised.
Thank you for joining us. And if you happen to be a first-time listener or if you're a seasoned listener, you'd like to reach out with a shout-out, tell them, James, where they can reach us at.
They can email us at charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. They can also visit our previous podcasts at charliecrimebuster.com. And the email address is charliecrimebuster@gmail.com, again, as I mentioned before. And then also, if they want to become a subscriber to the podcast and also help our men and women of military, first responders, and law enforcement, they can become a badge, BADGE member for as little as $3 a month. That's less than a penny a day, by going to peacemakernetwork.com, peacemakernetwork.com. So now that we got the formalities out of the way.
Got it. We a little housekeeping, but we got to also remind the folks that we hope that they'll hit that button right now and subscribe to our YouTube channel, right?
That's right, because every time we drop a crime talk or even a podcast, either one, they show up on the YouTube channel, and that's youtube.com at Charlie Crimebuster. The tag is at Charlie Crimebuster, or you can just Google Charlie Crimebuster as one word, and it will appear as the first item in your Google search.
There we go. They can find us. All right. Well, what a case we're involved in. Before we do, James, I think it would be good for us because a lot of people are listening to us right after we drop these podcasts.
Right.
Now, we know that this podcast will probably be heard years and years beyond this, but we do know a lot of people follow us in real time. So we would like to say that we're certainly thinking about all the people in North Carolina, Tennessee, and Kentucky up in there where they had those horrible, horrible floods.
Yeah.
You know, we're accustomed here in Florida to getting hit by those hurricanes. And, you know, we are pretty well set for that. And it doesn't surprise us, but I think it surprised all of us, including the folks who lived up there, that a storm could hit Florida and then do all that destruction right up the coast. I mean, right through North Carolina, Georgia, up into Tennessee, and all the way to the Ohio Valley. Man, what a storm that was.
What a storm. And what's really sad is there was a lot of lives that were lost as a result of it. Especially in Asheville, North Carolina, it completely flooded the entire town. And they also had a mudslide there. And then also Chimney Rock was completely wiped off the map, completely gone.
And another town that I have visited quite a bit. Of course, I'm from Tennessee, worked with the sheriff's office there. Irwin, Tennessee.
Oh yeah,
was just really, really. I just a story today I was reading where there was a plastic plant up there, and they're alleging some of the employees are that people lost their lives because the managers there would not release them from work.
Oh, no.
Even though the water was coming into the parking lot, they said, go out and move your car. Can we leave? And it said, no, not yet. Not yet. It's not bad enough yet. And they just waited too late. And like 9 or 10 people lost their life as a result of that. Now, all that's going to be investigated by the TBI, Tennessee Bureau of Investigation. So I hope it's not true. But if it is, that's terrible that people would put profit before life in a situation like that.
Right. You know, what's really interesting of this also in this case was that there was a sheriff that told people that were not going to leave to take a permanent marker and put their name, address, and date of birth on themselves in the event that they didn't make it.
I know.
So they could be identified.
Yep. And, you know, we have sheriffs down here do that all the time with these hurricanes. We have people who just want to rest it out. But anyhow, we do want to take a moment to say, let's say a prayer for all those families, over 100 people
Yeah.
died as a result
Yeah.
of the storm, and let's remember them. There's another person who died. His name was John O'Keefe, and that's what this story is all about. So
That's
let's
right.
get right into episode 5 of Karen Reed, Cop Killer or Cop Girlfriend.
Okay. Well, Charlie, there's probably some people that maybe have been hiding under a rock and don't really know what's going on. But what was this case and series really all about? All five of them.
Well, you'd have to be under a rock if you didn't know about it. I mean, it certainly got national attention, and
It did.
people were really, really. It just kind of drew people. The story did because of all the different things with allegations of police corruption, this sort of thing. But it all happened on January the 29th back in 2022. And that's when John O'Keefe and his girlfriend went out for the night. They were at some bars, met some of their friends, and then there was an after party at one of his friends' house. There was a sergeant in the Boston Police Department by the name of Brian Albert, and so they're going to have an after party there. Now, John O'Keefe is a Boston police officer, and or was, we might say, and so they went to the after party. Karen says that she wasn't feeling well, so she dropped him off and left. And then the next day, John O'Keefe was found in the yard of Brian Albert, and he had terrible, terrible injuries. And they rushed him to the hospital, and not too long after that, he died of what they call blunt force trauma and hypothermia.
Hmm. Hmm.
So the the case then went to 3 days later. They arrested his girlfriend, Karen Reed. That's for Karen Reed, the name of the episode. Arrested her because they alleged, the prosecution did, that she backed up around 20, 23, 4 miles an hour and hit him and caused those injuries by hitting him with her car.
Hmm.
But then her attorney, by the name of David Yanna, he comes in and he says, no, it didn't happen that way. He said that Brian was actually beat up in the house. They got in a fight, and somebody brought his body and left it in the yard there to die. So that's the two things that's going on. She did plead not guilty, but 4 months later, on June the 9th, a grand jury indicted her of these charges. And it's important to remember these charges because they come up in our episode: second degree murder, motor vehicle manslaughter,
Hmm.
and third, driving under the influence and leaving the scene of a deadly crash.
Hmm.
So she was charged with that. It went to trial, and then just recently, as you know, back July the 1st, this trial was dismissed because there was a hung jury,
Hmm.
and so they could not come to conclusion, and so it was declared a mistrial. And so that's where we are. That's what this story is all about.
So let me ask you this: and again, people have probably been hiding under a rock and they really don't
Sure.
know.
Right.
But
Yep.
have you called something called a trooper gate? Is there
Yeah.
any update on that?
Yeah, well, you have Watergate, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
We
For
all
those of us that know about the Nixon
some of
era,
us some of us remember Watergate, but
yeah,
the people have a tendency to add the word gate to all kinds of things these days,
that's true.
and so I decided to call it Trooper Gate because actually, when her attorney actually made allegations that Trooper Michael Proctor, that he had bias in the investigation, and also that they believe he manufactured evidence and planted it at the scene.
Hmm.
There was also, amazingly, not one, but four troopers that went under internal affairs investigations that were tied to this case.
Hmm.
And there was a Canton police officer also in internal affairs investigations. Now, we know that Michael Proctor has now been relieved of duty as far as his duties and also has been suspended without pay. The other one was a guy by the name of Sergeant Uri. He ended up getting 5 vacation days taken from him as his discipline. And the reason they disciplined him, James, is you remember in the trial, they actually read, and I think you and I were talking about this just before the podcast or the show tonight, actually read the text that he had
Hmm.
given to other people that was all terrible things about Karen Reed. I mean,
Terrible.
he even said he wished that she would die, wish
Yeah,
she would kill
yeah,
herself.
yeah.
Now this is the lead investigator of this case.
Hmm.
and that's just not proper. That's not ethical. It's not correct. You don't have when you're investigating a case, you need to follow the evidence. You don't need to be biased one way or the other. You need just to
Exactly.
go like Dragnet, old Dragnet show,
Yep.
just the
Yep.
facts, man, just the
Yes.
facts. Investigate the facts. But he certainly had a bias, and so as a result of that, four different troopers were under investigation. Sergeant Urey was disciplined because he received those texts, and he did not initiate the text, but he received them on that chain of a text chain, and he should have reprimanded him, should have told him that this was conduct that was not becoming of an officer,
Right.
and should have stood up, but he did not stand up, and so him and a number of officers were involved in these terrible, terrible, cruel texts about this woman. Now, granted, these guys thought that this lady they believed, many of them believed that she had killed their friend.
Hmm.
And so I know they would think that way, but you can't investigate a crime like this and be that biased. So that's what we call Troopergate.
But you also talked about a new sheriff in town. Who is it, and what does that mean?
Well, yeah, there was a new teammate. Uh, you know, uh, and I like this because I think it'll put a fresh eye on the investigation. I think that's what they need. So since the mistrial, the prosecutor, the district attorney rather, has brought a new prosecutor on, and his name
Oh,
is Brennan, and he's a pretty high caliber attorney. He has had a lot of very important clients, and the interesting thing though is that he's best known as a defense lawyer. So I
interesting.
thought it was very interesting that they brought a high key defense lawyer
Right.
onto their team. Now, we all know that Karen Reed has a high caliber defense attorney.
Hmm. Hmm.
Certainly, he's probably one of the best in the country. So I guess the prosecutor thought that he had to kind of level the field, as far as
Hmm.
that goes.
Hmm.
And so they brought him on to the team now. Now the other attorneys will be working with him, but he'll be leading the investigation. And in some of his comments, he said he wanted to be fair, and he also wanted to see justice for John O'Keefe. And so I think some new eyes on the. Well, a lot of people are all applauding this move, thinking that that's what this case needs is a new, fresh pair of eyes looking at it from the prosecution side.
Well, Charlie, how did the defense react to this new prosecutor coming on board?
Well, it sure, Alan Jackson is, he really has. I admire him. I think he's a wonderful defense attorney. And I love what he said. He had to take time to kind of put a little gig in there.
Hmm.
He basically said that he thought that he said Michael Morrissey has decided to use taxpayer funds to hire an outside lawyer, and then he went on to say not only is he using taxpayer funds to bring on an outside lawyer, but that shows that Alan Morrissey doesn't have a lot of confidence in his team. So
Yeah.
he hit
Yep.
those two little gigs in there. But then basically he said they can bring anyone they want to court. He said we're going to beat this unjust prosecution just like we did the other one.
Okay, Charlie.
Yeah,
Try to
in fact, he said to Mr. Morrissey, he said, "Do your worst, do your worst."
Yeah.
You hear people say, "Do your worst." He said, "Do your worst." So Alan Jackson's quite an attorney, and I think you saw him at work today, and
Yeah.
looking at some of the trial, and you can tell he certainly knows what he's doing in the courtroom.
He does. He does. Well, Charlie, now try to keep a straight face when you tell us about the crazy crooks
I
story
don't
this
I don't
week.
think I don't think I can.
You
Uh,
can't make this stuff up, you
isn't
know.
that the truth? Yeah. Our guy is a guy by the name of Justin John Bowden. And he was at a bus station, got into an altercation with a lady, and as sometimes these conflicts go, it escalated into violence. He actually hit her, struck her, assaulted her, and then turned around and assaulted another man. But while he was doing it, James, he had a folder, and he dropped that folder and he forgot to pick it up. Now, when we tell these stories, this has happened so often. These dumb, crazy crooks. Sometimes they rat their own selves out.
Right, right,
We've even had a story, where a guy actually wrote a robber note, a bank robber note, on the back of his own deposit slip.
right, right.
But okay, so people are already guessing. Okay, he dropped that folder. We know that probably there's something in that folder that would identify him, so the police can find him. Yeah, we've
Uh-huh.
heard that before, but there's a little different side to this one, James.
Okay, okay. So, yeah. I mean, I know what the answer is because I heard the podcast, but let's just hold on for a minute so the so
uh,
our listeners can just have a moment of suspense. I wish I had.
yeah,
I'll play some suspense music if I know. Like, it's tease our
yeah,
tease our
yeah,
guests to say, okay, you don't know
yeah.
what's in the folder. Hold on a second.
In
Let's see what's
that
in the
folder,
folder.
James, was his homework from anger management classes.
I had a good belly laugh when I heard that. I was like, "Are you
Yeah,
kidding me?"
yeah,
Here he is.
yeah.
Suppose he has this homework for his anger management class, but yet he
He's
hits
out
two
there
people.
beating up on people. So, yeah, as you said, we can't make it up, right?
No, we cannot make it
Yeah,
up.
so that was our crazy crook story. Gave us an opportunity to laugh a little bit, right?
That's right. That's right. Well, back to Karen Reed. What is it about this new court hearing for Karen Reed, and what does that mean in this
Well,
case?
James, you know that after the mistrial,
Hmm.
they begin to try to, and a lot of times attorneys will do this, they'll pool the jury to find out how their case was presented and how the jury received the case. And
Well, can you
they,
can you can you hold on a second for that thought?
sure, yeah.
Why didn't they poll the jury on the first case?
Well, that's some people are asking that. They did not poll them. You don't have to poll them, but you can request for them to be polled. Any
You, you,
attorney could, and
was that was that a
I
slip on
think
the part of the defense?
I think it was slip on the defense. I think it was slip on the judge. The judge
Yeah,
could have done it
yeah,
too,
yep.
and even the prosecutor. I think they should have been polled, but they weren't. And so after fact, it come to the attention of the defense that they had actually voted not guilty on two of the most serious charges, and that they had acquitted her on those two charges, and that
Hmm.
everybody in the jury was agreement on that. It was that third lesser charge of like leaving the scene, causing death by intoxication, which was a lesser charge than second degree murder, certainly, and other charges.
Hmm.
So, the defense attorney then came back to the judge and said, okay, after the fact, they said, since they agreed on those two charges, we are asking you to drop those two charges, let her be not guilty of those two charges, so that the next trial could only be the lesser charge. It couldn't be those two that the jury had already agreed that she was not guilty on.
Right.
So the judge there heard that, and the judge ruled against that appeal from the attorneys to do that. And so, she's got good attorneys, and if one judge shuts you down, you're going to appeal it. And so they appealed it to, the district court there,
Hmm.
and the district court comes back and says, "Hey, you deserve a day in court on this." So they've actually appealed this, and now it's going to be heard, James, by the Massachusetts State Supreme Court. A panel of three people are going to hear that argument, and they're going to rule on it. So it actually could be, if the court rules that those two charges should be dropped, then this next trial would only be that lesser charge, which is not near as serious.
Hmm.
So there's
Hmm.
a whole lot riding on this, and they say they're going to have that trial basically covering that in November. And gosh, the real trial is scheduled in January. That's like 60 days before the real trial.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
True. Well, how
Yeah.
did the prosecution respond to the news of this appeal ruling?
Well, the defense said, "Hey, we believe those charges should be dropped." And the defense also said, at the very least, there should be, an inquiry and
Hmm.
to see if all the jurors really believe that, so that they could settle that. So the prosecution comes back and they say, "Okay, we've got so many days to respond to that." to that appeal, and we're going to follow the rules of the court, and we're going to do that in a timely fashion. And so they said we're going to answer it. They haven't answered it yet, but they're going to answer it. They have so many days to answer it. And my guess is, James, what do you think? I think that probably they're going to allow the new prosecutor to respond to that rather than the old team.
Mm.
And it'll be interesting to see what he says, fresh
What
pair of eyes.
what concerns me is the fact that the charges that were brought were basically lumped all together as
Three of them, three of
yeah,
them,
all
yeah.
three of them were lumped
Uh-huh.
together.
Yeah,
So it was either like all or none was basically the approach that the prosecution took. They
right,
wanted,
yeah,
they wanted either a conviction on all of them or majority of them, or which they did not get. They
yeah.
they actually failed on two of them. So I fail to see how the legal system has the right to lump everything together. If you're acquitted on two charges, you should be only charged on the one that you it was marginal. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's exactly what the defense is saying,
Yeah.
that should happen that way. But um, the judge ruled no, this was a mistrial. And we remember the Russ trial that we covered, right?
Right.
When they dismissed that with prejudice, meaning
Right.
that they could not come back and charge him again with those charges.
Could the
But
judge in this case have done that
this,
for
yeah,
for
yeah, she could have come back and said she could have said on those two charges that those two charges are dismissed with prejudice
oh, okay.
because the jury totally agreed on it.
Right. Right.
But she didn't. She said it's a mistrial, and as a mistrial, it's without prejudice, so that they can bring it back. So it's really going to be up to what the state court says. And it's very seldom, though, James, do these things get turned over. Usually the judges pretty well side with the lower courts, but
Yeah.
we'll wait and see.
Uh, it's
I,
it's just
I think, I mean, but here's the problem, James. Here's the problem, though. Let's say this now. The jury, remember the jury instructions.
right. Right.
You're not to talk about this. You're not to go back and read the media and be influenced by the media. You're not
Mm-hmm.
to go
Mm-hmm.
research your own thing and be done all that. So, in a juror's situation, you have confinement there, and you're supposed to just stick to the facts of the case as it's presented. None of this outside stuff. But keep in mind now that once they're released, they've read those articles. They've listened to these podcasts like ours. They've
Yep.
listened to people's opinions, so they're probably going to be influenced.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
can is it fair to bring these jurists in now and say, okay, how do you feel about it? I think they have to say not how you feel about it now, but how did you vote then on those
Mm-hmm.
two cases.
Right.
And maybe they can do that. But we're all influenced one way or the other. So who knows if one person will come back and say, "Hey, I did think she's guilty, but now I don't think she's guilty," or maybe the other way around. Who
Yeah.
knows?
That's
No.
true. That's
But
true,
it'll
Charlie.
be interesting. It'll be interesting to see. I and I could be very wrong on this one, but I doubt very much that the state court is going to side is going to not side with the lower court. I believe she's going to face all three charges again.
Mm.
I don't
So,
think it's
well,
fair. No, I don't think it's fair. No, I think, if they had done it correctly, if the judge had polled them
mhm.
and made it, I mean, I guess they were so tired of all of trying to get them to make a decision that they were just frustrated and said, okay, it's a mistrial, let's do it. But if they took their time and said, okay, what have you agreed on?
Mhm.
And go from there, we wouldn't be having this conversation. But unfortunately, they didn't do that.
So then, Charlie, just suppose that they don't win the appeal. The defense does not win the appeal, and so therefore she's going to be tried on all three charges.
Hmm.
In what ways will the trial be different this time around?
Well, I think it's going to be different in a number of ways. One of the first things is that
I mean, what new evidence? I mean, they've got.
the first thing I said at the podcast, the first thing they've got to deal with is the elephant in the room,
Yeah,
right? And the elephant in the room is Michael Proctor. I mean,
Yep.
I believe that's what turned this case on its head.
Oh yeah.
Whenever he exposed Michael Proctor with his police misconduct and his bias approach to this case, it led the doubt there that could this guy who was biased, could this guy who said that he wished that the defendant was dead, would this guy have enough gumption about him to plant evidence? Well, some people say, yeah, I believe he could.
I'm thinking
And
not only
and
did he
and and,
plant
and
evidence, I think
normally,
he tampered with evidence as well.
yeah,
There's
yeah,
there's video missing,
yeah, so
parts of video
there's
missing.
because of his bias and because they found these texts, it's easy for people to think that way. Maybe it didn't happen, but it sure leaves room for you to think it did.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so, I think the prosecution they're gonna have to still deal with Michael Proctor. They're gonna have to bring him to the stand. They're gonna have to, say, hey, this is terrible. And he's going to say, like he did during the trial, this was very, very terrible conduct of me. I used poor judgment, blah, blah, blah. But that did not impact the investigation.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the prosecution is going to have to say that because it's like a lot of attorneys do this. If they've got something that their client is very weak in, they like to be the one that'll lead the client to go through that so that they can make the best picture they can out of it. If the prosecution doesn't call him, hey, the defense is going to call him,
Oh yeah.
you know, and they're going to expose him again, and it's going to be that got you moment,
Yep.
that says to the jury, hey, we got something going on here. So
Yep.
the prosecution, I believe, they're going to call him back, and they're going to try their best to rehabilitate him as much as they can, and they're just going to have to live with that. But the other thing I think the prosecution is going to do is I think you're going to see a lot more focus on the accident itself are what they're alleging happened with the car hitting John O'Keefe. This is what they say. There were 70 witnesses in that first trial. They spent a whole lot of time parading people up there who said
Mm-hmm.
that he wasn't in the house. And
Right.
I think it took a lot of the emphasis away from what the prosecution was trying to prove. And I believe that in this next case, the prosecution they're going to spend a lot more time on talking about what they feel happened and why they feel it happened rather than bring all these people, people in it to do it. I believe that they're going to make a clearer picture of how that vehicle hit John O'Keefe. And I don't think they're going to call as many witnesses. So I think you're going to see a shorter trial, and I think you're going to see a sharper trial, and I think you're going to see them go right to the evidence more than bringing in all these people to say that he wasn't in the house.
Right. Right. Well, during the podcast, Charlie, you shared that one thing that you thought might get the prosecution a victory. What was that again?
Well, I think one thing that would help me, if I'm looking at it and I'm a jurist, is we know the defense, and when we talk about what the prosecution will do, I think defense is just going to stay their course. I think they're going to, they did a great job in bringing doubt into that case,
Mm-hmm.
and so I think you're going to see a lot of the same things. I think they're going to bring their experts on just like they did. I do think the defense might this time focus a little more on trying to bring something to the trial to help show her not guilty of that lesser charge because they know that on the basis of pooling the jury that they had the doubt on the two most serious charges.
Mm-hmm.
So I think now they're going to say, okay, we're going to do that, but we're going to also show why if she's not guilty of these two, she's not guilty of the lesser as well. And I think they'll do that. But what I said when I said I think what could make a difference is how many accidents do you think, James, just in your mind, that has happened in the last 50 years in the world?
I have no idea. I'm sure
When you
probably
say
quite a few.
millions, yeah, certainly,
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, millions.
Billions,
Okay.
billions, maybe billions
So,
even.
so if the prosecution could really and you might have to use, artificial intelligence to do this. But if the prosecution could find similar situations where a vehicle backing up at 22, 23 mile per hour, hitting someone could have caused massive damage to a body, I think that that would make it much more reasonable for the jury to believe that it happened here.
Yep.
Because I think that was the real case of the defense. Uh, they had these ARCO guys in who were not hired by the defense, was not hired by the prosecution. They were neutral people, actually hired by the FBI, believe it or not, who were doing another investigation on this. And these guys who are scientists and who are physicists all came and they said these experts said that his injuries was not consistent to what the prosecution said happened, that SUV backing up and hitting him. They said that those injuries were not consistent. Well, if they could find accidents where that happened that
Hmm.
showed that same kind of pattern of injuries,
Yep.
I think that would be I think that would turn this case around. Now, maybe they can't find it because maybe that's not happened.
Right.
But if I was a prosecutor, that would be that would be my ace in the hole. That's what I would go for. If
Yep.
I can show that, and probably something like this. I do know that I have, as an investigator in accidents, and I've investigated a number of car accidents as a road officer and doing accident reports and drawing diagrams and all that. I had seen cases where there had been very maybe a vehicle not traveling very fast at all can do a lot of damage to someone.
Hmm. Hmm.
And
It's a
if
3,000 pound weapon,
yeah, 3,000 pound weapon, and if let's say as that poor, I felt sorry for that trooper that was the reconstructionist because when he was up there, he couldn't answer any of the questions about scientists or physics or this sort of thing, and then the defense comes in and they give all the answers for this, so the field wasn't level, I should say,
Yeah.
and whenever this happened. Uh, I think that was really put the prosecution, really was a blow to the prosecution. So
Hmm.
if they
Hmm.
could bring somebody in and show that this kind of accident happened, uh, just like that in another place and did that. I mean, they're saying that, everybody says, well, how did he have that blunt force in his head?
Right.
Well, what did they say? They said it hit him and, he fell back and hit the curb. Well, you could, there've been guys in fights out there where you've hit another person and they fall down and hit a curb, and it's caused that same kind of damage.
Yeah, but how could hitting a curb end you up in the middle of a yard?
10 yards in the yard,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Because his body was found 10, 15 yards up in the yard, right?
From the curb,
Well,
from a
yeah,
curb.
yeah. Uh,
I'm
you
sorry,
know,
I don't see it.
okay, but wait now, stay with me, all right?
Okay, okay.
A guy gets his head hit, he's dazed, right? And he's and this was a big guy, this is a strong guy. What not to say that he didn't get up, and stagger around and walk a few steps and then fall.
Where do you get all the other scratches? And dog bite.
Well, it wasn't proven that it was dog bite. They said it was likened into something of dog bite, but it wasn't proven it was dog bite, right?
That's true,
Yeah.
but it
You
was
know,
not.
they say that the scratches was from that tail light, that he hit the tail light, hit his arm, scraped his arm, spin him around, he hit his head on the curb, and then he got up. I mean, you're not just playing devil's advocate.
I
Now
know.
you know already that
Yeah,
I said that if I was part of the jury, I would have voted not guilty
right, right.
because there was reasonable doubt, and I believe there
Exactly.
was reasonable doubt.
I do
But I'm
too.
I'm just saying that there is another side to this, and if the prosecution can come back and show where that kind of injury has happened before, I think it would level the field a little bit as far as they go.
There's too much other evidence that shows that there's evidence that was tampered with. I mean, there's videos that are skewed where, any other time the video was fine, but then when Proctor's out there examining the end of the SUV, that video is askewed. It's
Yeah, yeah.
hard to view. It's everything.
Well, it's
It's
turned around the other side. It was
exactly,
reversed. But I mean, was it an accident or was it done on purpose?
exactly. So I mean, it just raises the question and puts into question. Is it reasonable? It's reasonably doubtful that she did in fact hit him. It was
Yeah.
the evidence was tampered with.
There,
They can't prove that it wasn't tampered with. Is my point.
yeah. There are two things that really I think wrecked the prosecution. Two things. I think you could summarize it in two things. Number one, there was police misconduct.
Yes,
No doubt about that.
no doubt about that.
No doubt about it. I mean,
Yep.
even if you don't go to planting evidence and this sort of thing, his bias approach, the fact that he said things like "I wish he was dead,"
Hmm.
that's police misconduct. Secondly, James, there was sloppy police work.
Yes,
You know, I
and
mean, I mean,
not enough
yeah,
investigating
yeah,
was done.
it was sloppy because what I was taught, and I did not only was I on the road, but I was an investigator for a few years of my department. And what you're taught in investigation, do not leave any stone unturned.
Exactly,
You look
exactly,
at it all. And
exactly.
had he gone into that house, had they gone in there and interviewed those people, said we want to search the house,
Hmm.
and if they didn't get permission, get a search warrant.
Right,
Search the house to see if there's bloody clothes in there, see if there's any evidence whatsoever of a fight. If they had done that and they did not find any evidence, then they would have had a strong case.
stronger
But
case. Yeah.
because of a sloppy job of investigation. So two things: police misconduct, sloppy police work, torpedoed this entire case. Now the question is, can the new prosecutor can he get around that? I think he's going to be better because listen, he's been on the other team, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
He's been
Yeah.
a defense attorney. He knows what he's got to do to get in there and try to take that doubt out.
Yeah. Right.
Now,
Exactly.
if it's there, I believe he'll try to do it. Yeah, I'm hoping that if it's not there, you know what I'm hoping, James. I hope he's man enough that if he looks at it and he says it's just not there,
Hmm.
that he just says there's not enough. We don't have enough evidence that we can present to get a guilty plea. So let's not waste the taxpayers' money and let's just drop this thing. You
Yep.
know.
Yep.
Yep. But I bet we'll go to trial. What do you think?
If if he's a good previous defense attorney, and he sees that there's definitely a benefit of a doubt that's there, I look for him to drop it.
All right. You and I'll see, right?
That's right.
Hey, folks, it's been a joy to have you with us today. And I don't know if these people have as much fun as you and I do or not, but we sure have fun, don't we?
We do. We do.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
really talk it through.
Yes, sir. And listen, now next week we're thinking about this, James. Believe it or not, there are other cases that are tied to these cops
Yep.
that are now making some headlines. One even a murder.
Yep.
So next week we're going to kind of jump into that and see where else these cops that have been alleged that are crooked cops. We're going to see where else that's going to impact their other investigations.
I agree. Sounds like a good deal. So are you going to have episode 6 then next week?
We're
We're
going to
going to
have
pick it up
episode 6, the aftermath.
the aftermath. All right. Looking forward to it.
The aftermath of the trial. Yeah. All right. Folks, thank you for joining us. Don't forget to check us out on all of the social media platforms. Don't forget the YouTube channel, the Facebook, also our website, charliecrimebuster.com. So until this time next time, this is Charlie Crimebuster reminding you, stay safe, stay alert. Yep. For the life you save, it could be your very own.
You have been listening to Charlie Crimebuster. You can find additional podcasts at charliecrimebuster.com. You can also support our first responders, military, and law enforcement communities at peacemakernetwork.com. Or subscribe to our YouTube channel using tag @CharlieCrimebuster. Even visit our Facebook page, facebook.com/CharlieCrimebuster. Or if you would like to make suggestions for future podcasts, please send your ideas to charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. That's charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. Thank you for joining us today, and we hope that you will join us next week for another exciting crime story with Charlie Crimebuster.